Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Cindy Moss. I'm the VP of Innovation for Defined Learning, and we're excited to have you join us today. We're going to be discussing creating synergy with STEM and how to drive student success with PBL. And we have the amazing Jay McTighe and two amazing education leaders from Grand Prairie. We have Aniska Douglas and Casey Roden. You're going to have a very enjoyable time on this webinar, and I'm sure you're going to want to save the recording that we send you and share it with other people in your district. If you, in the chat, if you want to hit to everyone and let us know who you are and where you're from, and if you already have a specific question, you can put it in there. I will be monitoring the chat. We'll provide questions to our speakers at the end, but I don't want to waste any more of our time. Here are the Jay McTighe, Aniska Douglas, and Casey. Your picture must be in there somewhere hidden. Yeah, there she is. She was hidden behind my list of people. So these are the people that you're going to be hearing from today, and we are very excited for this to begin. And so with what I'm going to do first is introduce Jay McTighe, and I'm sure anyone who's here knows that Jay is a real hero to all of us in education. He created Understanding by Design. He brings a wealth of experience developed during a rich and varied career in education. He served as a teacher, administrator, program coordinator, and director of the Maryland Assessment Consortium, a state collaboration of school districts working together to develop and share formative performance assessments. He's an accomplished author. Hopefully you've read some of his books. He's co-authored over 18 books, including the award-winning and best-selling Understanding by Design series with Grant Wiggins. His books have been translated into 14 languages. He's also written more than 50 articles and book chapters and been published in leading journals, including Educational Leadership. At Defined Learning, we love the assistance that Jay has provided us as we've created our PBLs. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Jay. So Jay, take it away.
Thanks, Cindy. Hello to everyone who's joined in. My part of this session is to kind of give a foundational set of comments regarding Understanding by Design and how it supports the work of STEM and PBL, and then turn it over to the folks from Grand Prairie to get into the particulars of how they're making this all happen. So the ideas I'm sharing with you come from my work with Understanding by Design with Grant Wiggins, but also two more recent books, one on the left, Designing Authentic Performance Tests and Projects, which the title says it all, and then Leading Modern Learning, which looks at a more of a systems view of how you build a performance-based curriculum focusing on authentic tests and PBL projects. So just to set the stage, many of you, I think, are familiar with Understanding by Design, but its big ideas are contained in its title. Since its publication 25 years ago, the focus of UBD has not varied. We're proposing that a modern education should ultimately be preparing students to transfer their learning, to be able to take what they've learned and apply it effectively and appropriately to new situations. But you can't transfer something if you don't understand it. If all you have is rote learning, all you can do is give back what was told you in the way it was told. But we don't think that rote learning is the optimum strategy for a modern education. Of course, we're developing foundational knowledge and basic skills, but those should be considered the floor, not the ceiling of a modern education. And then by design simply refers to a planning process, a curriculum design process that we've called backward design. This is not a new idea, nor is it original to Grant Wiggins and I, but it's proven to be an effective planning process for any goals that you have. And that's been the essence of Understanding by Design. You may be familiar with a three-stage design process. We start by identifying our goals or results for learning, and I'm going to comment on those in a moment briefly. Then we think about acceptable evidence. What are we going to look for to see if students really understand and can apply their learning? And stage three of backward design is the teaching learning plan. How are we going to go or involve students? How are we going to teach and engage them to achieve the goals that we've set out and support them in meeting the assessments that we've established? That's the essence of backward design. You may know that we have a planning template that basically is a graphic organizer that models the 3 stages of backward design and is a guide for teachers when they plan units of study and entire year-long courses for that matter. So that's the essence of design process. I'd like to share a couple of ideas with you before we get into the particulars from Grand Prairie. And I want to highlight a few ideas in stage 1 of backward design. This is where we identify desired results. But when we think about desired results for learning, I propose that we should consider 3 interrelated types of learning goals. These aren't brand new. They should be familiar, but they're not identical, and their distinctions matter. So the 3 types that Grant Wiggins and I have proposed. 1 are what we call acquisition goals, namely, what knowledge, particularly factual knowledge or basic concepts, do we want students to acquire, along with skills, and these include basic skills of every subject. We call these acquisition goals because the goal of learning is for students to acquire factual information and basic skills. And as you well know, if you're in public schools, your state standards specify, often in great detail, what students should know and do. And so we're teaching towards standards and these acquisition goals. But we have a second goal type that I like to call understanding goals. An understanding goal is more than a fact, more than a skill. It's a conceptual idea. It's bigger in nature. It reflects the big ideas, the concepts and principles of disciplines, in addition to the core processes of disciplines. Processes like problem solving, writing, research, historical inquiry, or the creative processes of the arts. And if we want students to apply those processes, they really need to understand them. And thirdly, we have the goal of transfer. Once again, the ability to take what has been learned and apply it effectively to new situations. And if we know anything about the modern world, we know that the modern world is continuing to change rapidly. We're in a global environment, not an isolated environment. Knowledge is increasing in many fields, and the world is unpredictable. Therefore, my conclusion is just preparing students to give back information that's been told to them, acquisition information, is insufficient. A modern education should prepare students for transfer. So these aren't new, but these are interrelated but not identical goal types. And the distinctions matter. They matter from a teaching point of view because how students learn and remember facts is not identical to how they develop deep understanding and the ability to transfer. These distinctions also matter for assessment. And as we know, a student might know something as the ability to remember it or select the right answer from 4 alternatives. That doesn't ensure that they understand and can apply that learning. And so these distinctions matter not only for how we teach, but what and how we assess. Thumbs up if you know the name John Hattie. Hattie. John Hattie is a researcher from New Zealand, spent his entire career, more than 35 years, studying, teaching, and learning at the university level, and has written several books describing what he calls visible learning, and he's identified the effect sizes of different teaching techniques. Anyway, I've gotten to know John in recent years, and he sent me an article which I'd like to highlight with John's words, but my graphic that's on the screen. John Hattie says, in all my years studying, teaching, and learning, I've concluded that we can think about 3 levels of learning for the student. John says there's surface level learning, typified by when teachers present new information to students, and they might write it down, or they might view it online or read it in a textbook. But John Hattie reminds us if the students don't do anything with that information, it can remain on the surface and will eventually, if not quickly, fade from memory. Then John says there's deep learning, which he defines as I do. Deep learning is learning with and for understanding. But deep learning is below the surface. It doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen just by a teacher telling a student. I like to say understanding must be earned. Student has to work with ideas, think about questions, try things out, and that's how we develop and deepen learning. And then Hattie agrees with Grant Wiggins and I that the deepest learning is evident when students can transfer. So this is one of the key thought leaders and researchers in our profession, highlighting ideas that are at the heart of UBD, and I contend are at the heart of good project-based learning. We want to go below the surface, engage students in applying their learning toward the end of deep learning and enabling them to become better at transfer. In the book, Leading Modern Learning, I've actually described a curriculum design process that includes identifying at the district or school level a set of what I call long-term transfer goals. These transfer goals are derived from academic standards in the disciplines, but they also include those skills or competencies that cut across the disciplines. And any of you that are in schools or districts that have identified a portrait of a graduate, that's that work. And so having the end in mind, which is what backward design implies, means not only knowing what you're going to cover in an individual unit, but it should mean what are we collectively working for across the grades? What are we trying to develop, in other words, in the long run with our students? And by the way, this is very congruent with the current crop of standards that we see around the country. Now, this example comes from Mathematics Common Core. And even though the name Common Core has fallen out of favor for political reasons largely, the key ideas of the Common Core standards are evident in many state standards. And if you're familiar with those, you'll know that in, say, for mathematics, the standards not only identify mathematical content, the subject matter, but they identify the practices of math. These are the process skills. This is what it means to do math. And these are what I call the transfer skills of the discipline. And here are a few of their mathematical practices. Similarly, in science, the next generation science standards have 8 science and engineering practices that are at the heart of STEM. And so as we're developing student capacity to transfer, we're building these skill sets. These are transfer goals. And I'm not going to go through every standard set, but this is an example from C3 Social Studies of the thinking skills that are at the heart of history and social studies. And every subject area has such important transfer type skills. In addition to those in academic areas, we have those skills that cut across disciplines. And the schools and districts that have identified a portrait of a graduate are often referencing what we know about the world outside of school. And there are sources such as the one on the screen from the World Economic Forum, where employers and university folks and people in various fields have identified the skill sets that are really prominent and necessary and called for in today's world. And even though the skill sets vary from group to group, they're more common than different. And this set, for instance, highlights things like the ability to solve complex problems, to think critically about issues, to engage in creative and innovative thinking, to work and coordinate well with others. And these are, in fact, the very skill sets that good project-based learning cultivates. And so we're not just teaching subject matter, we are building in these transferable cross-curricular skills. And here is just a set of ones that are often seen in schools and districts that have actually gone through a process to identify what they envision for their graduates. So I'm going to wrap up, but make a quick comment in stage 2 of backward design is when we are looking at acceptable evidence. Here's one of my favorite cartoons. When we think about assessment evidence, I think too often we tend to focus on that which is easily tested or the format of standardized tests. But if you think about the goal types that I highlighted, while paper and pencil multiple choice is good for checking to see if students have acquired facts and have basic skills, we need more of a performance-based approach to assessing the transfer goals and those portrait of a graduate competencies that cut across. And that's what a good PBL curriculum and assessment system does. So again, if we want evidence of all of our goals, not just the things that are easy and quick to test, we need to incorporate more performance-based measures. So I'll leave you with an analogy. Think of the transfer goals as the game you want students to be able to play with their learning. It's an authentic performance where they're applying knowledge, skills that they've acquired with conceptual understanding, also known as game strategy, and they're putting it on the field or on the court or on the ice. And that a good STEM PBL program is engaging students in playing the game and doing authentic applications of learning, and in so doing, deepening their learning and preparing them for transfer. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I don't want to take any more of the time from the Prairie District folks, but I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back to Cindy for the next part of this webinar. You're on mute.
Thank you, Jay. And thank you so much for that good overview of the power of PBL. And what we want to do now is talk to people with boots on the ground actually doing that. First, we have Aniska Douglas. She's Executive Director of Career and Technology Education in Grand Prairie. This is her 9th year. She started as a business teacher at Grand Prairie High School, subsequently became a graphic communications teacher at Dubisky Career High School. She earned a master's degree in education leadership from Texas Tech, then served as an assistant principal before transitioning into career and technical education as a coordinator, assistant director, director, and now executive director. Prior to teaching, she served as an executive at a multinational management, consulting, technology services, and outsourcing company. So she has lots of experience. She's a proud graduate of the University of Alabama, where she received her Bachelor of Science degree in Management Information Systems and Computer Science. She's really passionate about serving and preparing our future leaders in career and technical education. And in her spare time, she enjoys watching college football, of course, Alabama, volunteering, and spending quality time with family and friends. Her partner at Grand Prairie, and in many places, this is very unusual that these two partners, so I'm excited for you to hear from them. Casey Roden is the director of pre-K-12 STEM education in Grand Prairie. She says the best part of her job is working alongside teachers as their students engage in meaningful hands-on learning. She enjoys partnering with other departments and organizations to create experiences for students to explore careers and extend their learning beyond the classroom. This is her 13th year serving Grand Prairie in the Teaching and Learning Department, and her 4th year as Director of Pre-K-12 STEM, serving previously as a district high school content strategist and then as a secondary content facilitator. Prior to joining the Teaching and Learning Department, she was a high school AP teacher at Dubisky Career High School and 9th grade center department chair. She's a busy mom with 3 daughters, 2 curious and playful Dachshunds, and she enjoys spending time with her husband and family. Being in nature with her family and a good book is her idea of the perfect weekend and is often where you'll find her in her downtime. So I look forward to what you guys are going to learn from our friends in Grand Prairie. So you guys start sharing your screen and take it away. Oh, and remember, share your questions in the chat if you have questions.
Wow. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see everyone from all around the world. Thank you for having us. As Dr. Moss mentioned, I'm Aniska Douglas, the Executive Director of CTE here in Grand Prairie ISD, and I'm here with Casey Roden, who is our District Director for PK through 12 STEM. We're excited to share with you a few ways that our district departments have joined together to create synergy between CTE. Let's talk a little bit about our district. We are in the heart of the DFW Metroplex. We have about 27,000 students, 69% Hispanic, 17% African-American, 8% white, and 6% other races. We have 38 campuses, which includes 2 pre-K campuses and also 2 early colleges. early college high schools, 29 Title I schools, and 33% of our emergent bilinguals, and 75% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. In the state of Texas, we're known as a district of choice, which basically means any student in the state of Texas can come to our district, and we specialize in fine arts, STEM, leadership, single gender, career, highly gifted, collegiate, and world languages. In addition to this, we have 30 plus CTE programs of study and 3 national Blue Ribbon schools.
We're very fortunate in Grand Prairie ISD to have an innovative and forward-thinking technology department. We have a supportive school board and community, and we are one-to-one devices for our students in pre-K through 12th grade. So all of our students, all 27,000, have an iPad. We also have Mac carts in our classrooms, and in some courses, our CTE courses, they have the Dell computers as well as needed by their content. So some of those are 2-to-1. The partnership between CTE and STEM began in 2019, and although our departments were strong separately, when I came into the role, it was the same year that the Texas Education Agency had expanded its CTE funding down into 7th grade. It allowed for better conversations between CTE and STEM, but really it also created a lot of challenges and overlap. We weren't sure how we really fit together. We had to break down our silos and build a model. So we began by developing focus, and that required communication. It wasn't just done in one meeting. It was a series of meetings. The meetings were helpful in that it helped us discover that we had a shared core belief of hands-on instruction. And so we really wanted to make sure that our kids were the ones doing the work, because it created a deeper understanding of the content, and so that they could eventually apply. We then moved into finding the overlap of how our programs serve students, and we were able to enhance our programs through expanding internal internships. But like with any program and the nature of our programs, we wanted to extend that learning beyond the classroom walls. So we wanted to create some local and community experiences for our kids. And these 4 key areas helped us find our common ground and set a path on how we wanted to move forward. So we want to note, we began as a nice scene. We had like 1 semester of regular teaching, regular education. And every year since then, we've had its own unique challenges with the pandemic and post-pandemic teaching, learning, and working. And so this model is constantly evolving. It's an iterative cycle, and it's really more circular than linear. And that's really hard to show in a slide, but we're trying to do that with the arrows. So after we began working together, our first goal was to increase communication between the departments, because before that, say in our district, is that we were working in silos. So we had some great things happening, but we weren't really communicating. So we wanted to find the common ground. And where we found that common ground was in our portrait of a graduate. So just like Jay was talking about a while ago, the academic skills and the transference of those 21st century skills. With STEM being part of the teaching and learning department, we eventually found our way by deciding that CTE develops the what with the programs of study, and that STEM really supports the how. So the critical thinking and the hands-on instruction is something that we support. This year, we even expanded that by combining our leadership team meetings to help build rapport between our 2 departments, and we expanded the networks of everybody in our team. We shared our calendars and discussed possible internship opportunities. As a result, we have more students than ever involved in our STEM programs, but not just as learners, also the leaders. And it's a huge part of what we do to develop that leadership, not only within our staff, but also within our students. And in smaller groups, we look at curriculum documents and resources to streamline our support for teachers and campuses. We have 2 departments, but 1 voice, and that's really critical because a lot of our teachers overlap, because there are CTE teachers that are in the STEM fields. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't coming at them saying 2 different things. And so Aniska and I worked really hard to make sure that it was just 1 voice supporting the same message.
As Casey mentioned, communication is key. We started strong, so we wanted to make sure that we had an ongoing partnership. The big meetings are great at establishing common ground and developing a goal of focus for the year, but the work is really done in those small meetings throughout the year. Here are some examples of our ongoing partnerships. Shared PD.
Okay, so I want to interject real quick. Look at those pictures right there. So when we talk about shared PD, you know, sometimes I think about just sitting a whole bunch of people in a lecture hall or in a cafeteria somewhere learning stuff to do. Well, that's not how our PDs are. We want our teachers to teach in small groups. We want them to have hands-on instruction and experience for our kids. So that's exactly what we deliver. So in that top picture, you see that they're exploring things in a small group hands-on, just as they would deliver it with students. And in that bottom picture, we take our teachers on field trips too. And so at the beginning of the year, we have a couple days dedicated to professional development. And those are some of our science teachers on a bus getting ready to go to the landfill, which is, I think, kind of an unusual situation, but it's so fun because we have environmental teachers there, biology teachers, AP teachers on that bus, and they all got to go in different areas to look at maybe how energy is converted, how the wetlands is actually like how it supports our environment, and how they convert everything at the landfill. And then what's happened as a result of that is we've had already 4 field trips with our students out there at the landfill doing those hands-on projects with our city professionals, and they're getting lots of career guidance as they go to. So they're getting the academics and the careers paired together.
Casey, that was a great example. In addition to the shared PD, we also have weekly planning meetings, hands-on projects, rich experiences, which you'll hear about later on in the presentation. And funding is key. It's huge as well. We work together to fund our teachers, whether it's equipment, professional development. We make sure that they're getting both funding sources from CTE and from STEM. And then aligning resources, instructional approaches, and processes. That's huge. We collaborate on Project Lead the Way, of course, Define Learning and Define Careers, and PBLs, and building college and career readiness in school models.
So, as we've talked about already, we have a core belief of hands-on instruction, that it's really more than just students doing things with their hands. Like, that's the basic idea of hands-on instruction, right? It has to have meaning, it has to have context, and it really needs to be integrated across contents for it to really have that deeper connection for the students. And so our approach for understanding is to begin with the end in mind. What do students need to learn to be successful? How will students be assessed? What kinds of things do we as educators need to make sure our students know in order to meet our goals? Once we have all of that established, we start looking at the content and the pacing, and then we put all the little pieces that come together to make the lesson. We've had the greatest success when we integrate project-based learning, and that's because it supports instruction that is anchored in relevance, inquiry, and the skills that they need. So DeJuan Smith, one of our PBL instructors at our Global Leadership Academy, said that project-based learning allows for hands-on projects that challenge the students to take charge of their learning, giving students a better chance to retain what they have learned. Students love coming to BBL, which is a class at her school, because in here, learning is fun. And so while some of those skills are content-specific skills, many of them are STEM fluency skills. We're fortunate in Texas to have resources that highlight the STEM fluency skills that give us a progression and examples of what students need to learn. It includes things like collaboration, critical thinking, innovation, communication, resilience, project and time management, just to name a few. And they're skills that are transferable across contents, and that they're skills that industry partners want in their interns and their future employees too. So we don't just start at our focus spans the grade levels, and we have students as young as 3 years old, because in our district we have pre-K3 and pre-K4. So they participate in age-appropriate PBL lessons all the way, the whole span, to really develop that thinking. And so through 12th grade, we support this model so students have opportunities in classrooms, district facilities, and in the community. So in these pictures right here, you'll see students in our pre-K classes at our early education school through 12th grade learning to solve problems.
And these are also great examples of students competing in career and technical student organizations. You'll notice in the far left and in the bottom right, that students are building robots to compete in the regional and state competitions. Students are given a challenge or a task to solve, and they have to work backwards to solve it.
That's right. And, okay. I apologize. I just messed up my screen. 1 second. I saw your question in the chat, and so I'm sorry I got distracted by that. Our department's focus on the PBL is, I think we're saving all questions for the end, right, Cindy?
You can go ahead and answer it since you stopped. Yeah,
Okay, I am so sorry, y'all. I just, this is all natural. So the question was about the PBL class. Is a separate class, right? Maybe I could read that question. There's like a lot in the chat. There it is. In this example, PBL is a separate class versus embedded in who has the option to take this course. Okay, so in that very specific example, that was at one of our elementary schools, and it's a global leadership academy. And so it's actually one of their specials rotations, like they might have art or science, art or music, which they still get art and music and PE and all of those things, but they've actually developed it into their master schedule for them to have a PBL class. And so what that PBL teacher does is she meets with all of the content teachers, the RLA and the math teachers, science, social studies, see what's going on, and develops videos for students to engage in. And she meets with every single student, kindergarten at that school through 5th grade. So all students are exposed to that, and they have different portions of PBL to do. It's a really great setup and works well at the school. That is not the that we have at every school, but at that particular one, because they're a global leadership academy, that's how the principal has decided to develop that master schedule.
And Casey, someone else asked, what would you say? They teach a robotics class that only competes internally. What resource would you say is good to use for PBLs for middle school robotics?
Well, middle school robotics. So I guess it would have to determine if it's a local credit. You say middle school, so it's probably not a high school credit. We have a continuum really where we use a lot of Lego education as part of our basics for the middle school robotics. Actually, we start that probably in 3rd grade. And then we use the VEX robots, which is what you saw in that system or in that picture. And we develop PBLs based on things that, like, for example, this year's Lego challenge is talking about alternative energy. And so you have to identify a challenge in the environment and develop a prototype or an innovative project that could address that challenge. So we have our city management partners coming in from the district energy department coming in, talking to our students about different energy problems and solutions to develop innovative ideas to spur that conversation with the students. So I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I can also take this and respond to it later.
That's a good start.
Yeah, good start. Okay.
Go ahead, back to your presentation.
Sorry. So this right here is a picture of some students actually engaging in PBL. It's rooted in solving problems for our community. Defined learning is actually what we use for these types of projects, because it's it outlines several resources that help students gain more of a contextual understanding of the issues at hand. So in these pictures, you actually see elementary students harvesting sweet potatoes, and they're donating them to a local food pantry, which is really great. We harvest a lot of produce throughout the year, throughout all of our gardens, to donate back into our community. But what you don't see is all the planning and decisions students had to do prior to harvest. So across our district, we have students identifying needs, designing, measuring, building, planting. And what's really exciting is that when they get these buckets of produce and they get to that sense of fulfillment and excitement that they have to see their project come together. They're making an impact in their community, and they really enjoy that. Jennifer Parra is one of our STEM teachers at a STEM academy that we have. And she says that interactive project-based learning keeps our students excited to come to class through activities that enhance their critical thinking skills. It allows for them to collaborate with their peers for problem solving with hands-on challenges. And what we really love is that our students are engaged and they look forward to learning and working together. When they get to class, they're really excited to work on their projects. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about these internal internships, because we actually love this. In our district, we're fortunate enough to have this natural science. It's in the heart of it's 39 acres, right smack in the middle, that has walking trails, wildflower area. It has 3,300 square feet of garden beds. It's got bird blinds and a house that we have lessons in. That's the house in the background right there. And we have 14,000 students who visit this annually. They come and spend a day or two out there, depending on what their program is. They have opportunities for authentic learning outside of the classroom, but we couldn't do it with 14,000 students. We couldn't do it with just our staff. So this is a problem that we came to CTE and we said, hey, we need some help. And they have the students who have been working throughout their programs of study to develop these skills. So now they're going to get to transfer that knowledge and apply it in this setting. We have educational leadership students who come and co-teach our lessons with our facilitator and our instructional aides. And they are such a support to the teachers who come to visit because they know the lessons. They have worked through the lessons. They have given their feedback on the lessons, tied them to our standards and everything. And so they really get that hands-on opportunity to work with different groups of students, work with different teachers too. So as well. In addition to that, we have engineering and architectural students helping us solve problems out there for our irrigation system. We have 3,300 square feet of garden beds, and sometimes our irrigation system doesn't really work the way we need it to. So they are engineering solutions to some of our challenges in our amphitheater. They're redesigning our amphitheater as well. Our architectural students are working on things like that. It's actually prototypes of bird houses that they're including in our nature center. So it's really neat to see because we have a whole unit in 3rd grade where all of our students study birds and study what types of foods they like, what types of habitats they like. And so this is something that our architecture students are designing to include in that section. And so they come out and they visit and they work with students and teachers also to get those projects done.
So with 30 plus programs of study within our district, we pride ourselves on internal and external internships. It's our goal to get every senior an internship. Our district farm to table initiative is a great example of our internal internship. Several elementary and high school students maintain fruit and vegetable gardens. Our culinary arts pathway students use that food to create dishes, which they then serve from our food trailer, the Grill Sergeant. Our goal was to provide nutritious and delicious options for our community, and the best way to do so was at our local park. We chose Grand Prairie Adventure Park, which is a playground that provides safe and fun playground experience of epic proportions for all ages and abilities. Another example of internal internships is A for Aerospace. It's one of our favorite internships. The district STEM department partnered with the local commemorative Air Force Base to introduce pre-K students to aviation by promoting relevant experiences. Our high school aviation students who currently serve as interns at the Air Force Base were able to assist with the effort.
Y'all, and we love the A is for Aerospace because we had 1,100 4-year-olds come out to this Air Force, commemorative Air Force hangar. So it is an active hangar, and they had a classroom set up, and we had 15 stations for them to rotate through. We had our aviation interns who actually work at that place were able to assist in this project. And so they were leading the stations. Like the stations were focused on, well, first when they got there, you have to have a ticket, right? So welcoming them and boarding them onto the plane. So this is actually going through gate B. What you don't see is that they have the little tickets, and then they had to go find their luggage. They got to fly a plane. They met with pilots, they met with engineers, with veterans, and they got to climb on the equipment and see everything firsthand. And so we actually did a pre and post survey just from the teachers to see how, like, was this impactful spending a half day out there with all of these kids? Did it impact their learning? And so it actually spanned 4 days. We did a morning session and an afternoon session because they're okay, we had nap time. But what you see here is that at the very beginning, the dark gray line is their knowledge before the experience and what they thought their students would know. And by the way, the teachers did pre-teach a little bit of the lesson before we actually got there. And so you see that the majority of the responses are over there in the 0, 1, 2. Nothing was more than a 2. Well, when you look at the green, this is the post-experience data. Just after that one morning, the responses like mostly were in the 3, 4, 5 range, which is really exciting to see that how much that experience where they got to climb on, they got to do and interact with everything, how much it impacted their learning. That was just really fun for us, fun data to share.
As Casey mentioned earlier, so prior to she and I coming together to collaborate, we operated in silos. So each group had their set of events for the students. CTE's Career Quest Camp is a summer K-5 summer camp designed to expose students to the various programs of study in career and technical education. During camp, students participate in several enrichment activities aligned to industry and careers. In addition to teachers providing quality instruction, our local community members always volunteer. Well, last summer, CTE teamed up with STEM to facilitate collaborative experiences. Students worked on projects with a STEM focus intended to enhance their core knowledge in literacy and mathematics. For example, our construction management teacher, taught measurements and fractions while instructing students on how to make toolboxes. Our local police chief and a few of his officers volunteered. This activity not only exposed students to carpentry, it also reinforced their understanding of core concepts since they were able to apply them in a real-world setting.
How many rotations did they get to go through Career Quest?
10 rotations.
They got to explore 10 different careers within that week-long experience. And our students really loved it. We tried to tie everything back to their core academics so that it was just reinforcing the knowledge in kind of a really fun, hands-on way.
Absolutely. And as we've mentioned, PBLs are a priority in Grand Prairie ISD CTE. Our students not only are accustomed to the rigor, they are excited about the possibilities. For example, our media technology students created a full-length motion picture during the 21-22 school year. The instructor, Tyler Case, said that project-based learning allows the students to have a hands-on experience and for them to shoot for the stars and dream big. In media tech, the students were able to produce a feature film with a worldwide distribution deal. Needless to say, this was such a great hands-on experience for the students. And
I want to add on to something that they're doing in their 3D animation class, because we have a planetarium in our district, and we are fortunate enough in our district to have Ron Proctor, who has worked in a planetarium before, but he's working with our planetarium coordinator to create a film using the 3D animation that is going to be shown on planetariums internationally at conferences. And it is our students who are creating that film. And so it's not rendered yet. It's hopefully going to be done by the end of next summer. The students are working on it in class now. They're going to have a showing for us as we get closer on our local planetarium before it gets polished and sent out for the international audience. So be sure to look for that. But it's going to have all the students' names who work on it. If their scenes get added into that program, their names are going to be in that film internationally.
And before you guys leave this, how many students participated in that summer CTE program, Aniska?
Oh, great question. So from a CTE perspective, we had 200, and our STEM students that joined us,
we had over 1,000. So about 1,100 students of the STEM programs were coming, and that was all students from my portion, from the STEM was 3 through 5, 3rd through 5th grade.
And it's on a volunteer basis. That's a great question, Dr. Moss, whoever asked it. From a CTE perspective, it's on a volunteer basis. We offer it to parents up to their students, K through 5, to get them exposure. And we usually hover around 200. So this year last year when we combined STEM, it was 1,200. So it was a huge deal, but we were able to manage, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, so looking ahead, like we said, it's an iterative process. We are constantly changing, going back, reflecting, designing. We're doing exactly what we ask our students to do. And so we're refining our instructional strategies and processes specifically related to PBL with increased support for teachers. So last year, we were able to start a PBL cohort with defined learning, and we had some of our STEM leaders in that cohort working towards understanding what PBL is, how to implement it in an equitable way, or a unified way so that it's equitable across the district. And we want to just continue that work in increasing that knowledge and understanding of what project-based learning is across our district. We also want to add in elements of family engagement. We feel like that's a huge part of what would support our students and change our community. And as our COVID restrictions are finally dwindling away, we're increasing competitions and field experiences for our students so that they can bring that knowledge outside of the classroom. So we're very excited to share what's going on in Grand Prairie. Would love to have any comments or feedback, questions. You can reach out to us anytime, and would love to hear some of your ideas. What's going on in your district if you want to share them back with us as well. So feel free to reach out.
Casey and Aniska, as you guys have shared some amazing experiences there that your students get to have, but people are asking, how does a regular classroom teacher in Grand Prairie get involved in PBL? How do they do that? And what kind of resources are you providing for them?
Okay, well, so I can start.
Elementary?
Which one?
You want to start with elementary?
Sure. A lot of times I go out to the faculty meetings. We have Wednesday afternoons reserved for faculty meetings. So it starts with a leadership conversation. I meet with the principals or the instructional coaches on each campus, and we determine what is it that their teachers need. Sometimes we utilize a survey to find out what they're interested in, but we'll go out and do a whole campus faculty meeting on certain aspects. And then we'll break into subgroups, and it's really just like a phased-in approach. We have continual visits to support the teachers. And I will say that it is a staggered implementation in some cases based on where the campuses are, the teachers' needs, and also just the I guess what all is going on that campus at that time. So that's one way that we start. We do have a team of teaching and learning where we go and we work with side by side. We might do co-teaching model lessons. We do some campuses, we have STEM coordinators. So it's kind of leveled and it's varied per campus.
From a secondary,
Wait a second, aren't you providing them with defined learning so they do have these resources so they don't have to create the PBLs themselves?
Thank you so much. Yes, that's actually a huge thing for anybody looking to get started. We have defined learning at our campus. So I actually support the defined learning really closely with some of our teachers. I mentioned that we did that cohort. That way they have somebody on site on their campus that can lead and walk them through that. And it is a site-based license. And so any teacher on that campus can use that material for their students. And so that's something that has been key because it's all right there and it is targeted toward the TEKS. So for example, that gardening project, we definitely went into defined learning, found some ideas about gardening. We can pull in those materials because you already have the great questions, the reflective part, all of the changes that have been made recently to the program updates are amazing and really aligned with what we promote in our district. And so it's just accessible right there at your fingertips and there's no app or anything you need to know. It's a single sign-on, which makes it easy for our teachers and our students to log on.
Can I just say, Dr. Moss, from a secondary perspective, middle school and high school, we encourage defined learning and defined careers because PBLs are mandatory. We want the students to have hand-on project experience. And what we found is most teachers have the desire to do PBLs, but they just don't know how to get started or they just don't know how to incorporate their content into projects. So we rely heavily on defined learning and defined careers to make that happen.
And can you guys talk a little bit about the literacy connection? Somebody said, can a language arts teacher do PBL? Will you talk about that as for your teachers?
Oh my goodness, I love that. The literacy connection is huge because like she said, we have 33% emergent bilingual. And so we are constantly in our district and our state looking for ways to embed literacy and to make it accessible for our students. And so a lot of that is pulling from texts and articles, like rather than a teacher just telling the information to the students, we want the students to go out there and research the information. So we pull books and put them in our Sora app, which is an online app that we have that are related to that unit. That's one way that we can combine literacy. We usually have an anchor text. So for our very littles, especially pre-K down third grade and under, we try to find a text that relates or a story that tells what's happening in the community so that they can relate back to it. And so before they came to the A is for aerospace, they read books about what pilots do. They read books about aviation and aerospace. We might have talked about weather or different things so that they have a little bit of an understanding based in story, because we know that students learn when you connect things to stories as well. So that's not the only way. We also bring in the articles for our older kids, non-informational text to reinforce that learning, because the students need to read and gain some understanding that way before they learn to apply it. It's really just, it goes hand in hand together. Taking what you're reading and applying it to what you're doing. And it marries really well to create a more concrete understanding.
And Aniska, in terms of secondary, can you talk a little bit about the math connection, or the way that PBLs are helping students understand that math is more relevant to their lives?
Absolutely. So with every program of study within the district, when they commence a PBL, defined already has the incorporation of the core academics, right? So math is already included, but we mandate our teachers to find out what the students are learning. So freshmen, for example, that are in Algebra 1, we make sure that the aspects of in Algebra 1 are incorporated into that PBL. Same thing with geometry and as they matriculate through. So those teachers actually have time to plan together. We actually encourage our CTE teachers to go into the math classes, sit as if they are a student so that they can actually retain some of the information and then connect it back to the PBL, and vice versa. We want those mathematics teachers or those core teachers to come into the CTE classes and see them turning wrenches or laying brick and mortar or designing a graphic for a t-shirt. We want them to see those exciting things so they can link them back to careers.
Well, you ladies were really incredible. We appreciate so much your enthusiasm, your passion. Your students and teachers in Grand Prairie are so lucky to have you there. And we're lucky that we had Jay McTighe and we had both of you there to share with us today. Many people are asking about, can they contact you for a tour or to see something else about you? Did you have your email? Okay, hold on. Will you stop sharing? I think I might have everybody's email on the last slide because people are asking about that. Let's see if I have that. We will try. And if we don't, if you put it in the, okay, I guess it doesn't have it. I thought that it had your emails. Aniska and Casey, if you'll put your email in the chat, they're asking if they could contact you to come visit, and that would be a good thing for them to do. On behalf of Defined, we want to thank our presenters. We want to thank the people who attended. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for hanging in there. We're so excited about the future of education. I think PBL and STEM give us reason to be excited because we can really prepare our students for what's coming next. Thank you so much for joining us. You will receive an email from Defined Learning that has a link to the recording that you can use, and you're also welcome to share it with other people. So thanks so much for all the work you're doing. Keep calm and STEM on. Thanks, everyone.